in these moments too, also, we make a choice. Are we going to run from God because we're mad and we're angry? Or are we going to run to God? Are we going to stay in his word? Are we going to dig in deep? Are we going to still go to church? Are we still going to do what's right? Or are we going to turn our back on God? And I don't know where I would be if I turned my back on him. I'm going to be completely honest. And it was only in those moments, digging into the word, that so many things came alive to me that in all my years of being a Christian didn't make sense. And all of a sudden, Psalm 23, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. It came alive, and it wasn't just a verse that I'd quoted since I was a kid. It wasn't just a verse that I'd memorized anymore. It was real because I was going through it. And I knew that he was with me, even in spite of the pain. I'm there in California, I'm praying. And of course, my initial prayers were, God, make this marriage, work it out. And then my prayers turned a little, not as holy as they should have been. I don't know if we're supposed to pray things like David was praying for his enemies, Lord, turn their bones to dust, crush their teeth, break their teeth. But, I dabbled in a few of those prayers, and I was like, you know what? I don't know what he's doing, and I don't know who he's doing it with. I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying that when you don't know what's happening, your mind makes up things. And at that time, I was still operating in the worry and the anxious mindset. So there was a lot of spinning out that was happening. So a lot of my prayers were geared towards that. I prayed. I prayed for embarrassing situations that men would not like to find themselves in during certain situations, if you understand what I'm saying. I should be ashamed. Am I? No. But maybe God just hasn't worked that out in me. I prayed some things, and I was like, I can't remember. I was talking to my dad, and he goes, maybe not pray those prayers. And I was like, why? I was like, if it's good enough for David, if David can pray to crush the bones of his enemies and do all the things, then why can't I? If it's good enough for King David, it's good enough for Elisha. And he goes, yes, well, David did a lot of things that we should not copy. And I said, you make a valid point. So I had to rearrange my prayers a little bit, but we're all human. We all do things we shouldn't do. Really, for me, the hard part was coming to terms with what was happening, because like I said, it came out of absolutely nowhere. My family was surprised. And the embarrassment for me, there was so much, like I said, I didn't tell anybody what was happening except for my immediate family. And I don't even think I told aunts, uncles and stuff. I think I had one cousin that I told. I had maybe 3 friends that I told at the time, and that was only out of necessity because I was leaving so quickly and I needed some people to take care of some things for me. But because of the embarrassment I felt, the shame that I felt, the guilt that I felt, I didn't tell anybody. I also didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want it to be real. And I was like, if I don't tell anybody, it won't be real. If I don't tell anybody because I know God is going to save this marriage, then I won't have to tell them. I'm not going to tell them, and I won't have to tell them. So if I don't tell them, it was just kind of like, if I don't say it, it won't be so. And I remember telling the pastor's wife what was going on. And I remember waiting for the look that I was expecting from her. because this was my second divorce. um, so to have to tell her that was one, what was going on was very embarrassing. And I expected her to look at me a certain way, like, oh, yikes, like, oh my gosh, like, yeah. But she didn't. She looked at me with so much compassion and so much grace, and she just said, whatever you need, we're here for you. Because I felt like now this is my second divorce. There's that feeling of being trash, that feeling of being left over, that feeling of abandonment and rejection, that feeling of now you're garbage. Who's gonna want you after this? you know, where is your value now? What are people gonna say about you if they know this about you? That you have 2 failed marriages. What does that say about you? Are you the problem? you know, the shame is real. The guilt is real, whether it's your fault or not. Right? Because it's still a failure. It's still a failure. Failure is failure. Anyway, right. So I was about in California for about 6 weeks, I believe. And going back was so hard because I didn't know what I was going to be walking into. I didn't know what his attitude towards me was going to be like. And again, for me, the worst part was the fact that this person who I loved more than anything just was so indifferent towards me. That was almost the hardest thing to come to grips with because it came out of nowhere. I didn't know that the last time I hugged him or kissed him or talked to him in a way that was like talking to my best friend was going to be the last time that I did that. There was no lead up. There was no preparation for me mentally. And it was almost like a death. And I don't want to belittle anybody who has actually lost a spouse because I can't even imagine. But it was just like the suddenness that everything that he was to me was taken away, right? My best friend, my travel partner, my movie buddy, the person I went out to eat with, the person I did most of everything with. Everything was just gone. And so I just went back and just not knowing what to expect. And it was really hard. And I'm not going to go into what that was like because then that would focus more on him. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I will say, he was never abusive or anything like that. He's a good man. He worked hard. He has, worked with integrity. He was very driven when it came to school and work and all the things. So, it wasn't like he was a bad person. So I'm not going to try to paint him in a bad light or anything. So it was in the moments, though, where I lived with him up until I finally found my own place because I had to move out because the house was his before we got married. And I'm basically having to restart my life all over again. But to be in an environment like that where you're nothing more than just a roommate, and in your head, this person is still your life partner. And I had to learn not to let the actions or inactions of others steal my peace. Because there were nights that I was up at night wondering, worrying where he was, what he was doing. I was just a wreck. And my mom was like, you have to learn that you need to learn how to find peace despite what he's doing or anybody else. Because if you let everyone else's actions dictate your happiness and dictate how peaceful you are, you're going to be in a world of hurt. You're going to be mentally in shambles. And it was true. I had to learn, and it was a very hard lesson to learn. It's hard to learn how to let go because in this situation, in this whole thing, I had absolutely no control. And for me, that was one of the hardest things because I was a control freak. That's why I worried so much. That's part of the reason why I had so much worry and anxiety. Because I wanted to be in control. But this was a situation where I had no control over anything. Everything was happening to me. And it wasn't anything of my doing. I was completely at the mercy of somebody else's choices. And it's a really hard place to be in. Because again, like I said, I had no idea how long it was going to last. I had no idea when the pain was going to be over. And I was still praying. I was still praying and praying and praying that God would do a miracle and save my marriage. And I was like, God, I know you can. I know you can. I know you're going to do it. I know you're going to do it. There's a ram in the bush. There's a way out. You're going to change his mind. Maybe the judge just won't sign off on it. Maybe whatever. I don't know how you could do it, but I know you can. But he didn't. He didn't save my marriage. And I was so confused as to why. I was like, God, why would you do this? Why would you let this happen? You don't want me to be divorced. But I prayed and prayed and prayed and believed and believed and believed until the divorce decree finally came down, signed by the judge, and it was all over. I mean, I think part of me knew, but the other part of me was just like, it can't happen. God's not going to let me be divorced twice. He's not going to do that to me. He's not going to let me live in this guilt and this shame and this embarrassment. He's not going to. No. There's just no way. The Bible says all the things about divorce. How could he let that happen? I know that you're still probably thinking why she called it divinely divorced. Besides my mom. And I know people are like, everything happens for a reason. And it happened. Yeah, the reason was he wanted a divorce. But I had to believe. And the thing that really, really kept me going, in those days where I was sobbing in the bed, sobbing in the shower, sobbing over my food, that I had to believe Romans 8:28, that all things work together for the good. And I think that was really kind of like the one scripture that it was like, whatever happens, God is going to work it out for my good. And that one little candle of peace in the middle of the darkness kept me centered, right? Because even like going to work and all that, I had to choose to be happy. Even though I was in the worst pain that I've ever been in my life, I chose happiness. And it wasn't a fake it till you make it, just paste a smile on your face. Sometimes you do have to do that. But I can honestly say that whatever miracle it was that God worked in me, I chose to find something to be happy about every day. Yes, there were moments when I had to run to the bathroom because a song came on that reminded me of him, or somebody came in with his name. I didn't run off that often, but you know what I'm saying? It was just, I'm not saying that I was totally just zenned out, peaceful, like, yeah, everything's gonna work out great, no worries, it's all good. I wasn't. And we're not gonna, sometimes you might be. I know people who can be very, calm in the storm because they have that relationship with God. And mine is still in development. even though I'd been a Christian for years. This situation, and I figured it out, like, because I was like, if this had never happened to me, it wouldn't have pushed me into the word. It wouldn't have pushed me into prayer like it did. You know, I might have still just had that superficial, shallow relationship with God that I'd had for so many years. And I might have just been happy with that because everything was just okay, you know, on the surface. It was just like life wasn't bad. But now here I am. My life is falling apart. I don't know when the pain is going to be over. I don't know if it's going to be over. You know, it's like, you know how like when you're in the middle of it, pain just seems like it's going to last forever. And I cried into my Bible. Like, Lord, just let me know how much longer it's going to be. Please, Jesus, please. If you could just give me an end date, then I could hold on. But he doesn't do that. Like, when you're going through something, he doesn't tell you. Why? Because he wants us to trust him. And it's hard. It's hard. Because I thought too, there was a moment where I felt like I was being punished. Like, God, what did I do? I had just come off of a 21-day Daniel fast where I was praying for myself. I was praying for my marriage. I was praying for my husband. And this happens. And I was like, Lord, did we have a breakdown in communication somewhere? Did you, was what I was praying for, was it not clear? But the thing is, maybe it was clear to him, even though it didn't come about the way that I wanted. Because the thing is, God sees things that we don't see. He hears things that we don't hear. And when things like this happen, when we are in these painful situations and we don't know how or why or what, and we have to trust God. Trust that he knows best. Trust that he's going to work it all together for our good. Trust that he has his best interest in heart, and trust that whatever we have lost, he's going to replace it with something better.